Will an interest rate cut stop the housing crash? Let's have a look. Hello everyone and welcome to this episode of Heiser Says. I'm Mike Stein and I thought tonight we'd read through this article about the Australian dollar falling and calls for the Reserve Bank to cut our interest rates. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar, interest rates in Australia are very low, like insanely low. They've got hardly any room to move. So any rate cut, if it's passed on at all by the banks, which they've been increasing by themselves, won't make that much of a difference to people who have a mortgage. Every bit helps, don't get me wrong, but I don't know if it is going to be as effective as people realize. And we also have our banks restricting lending. Okay, restricting lending. And that has more of an impact than people think. So let's have a read through this article. So the Australian dollar headed for a fall as Reserve Bank mulls interest rate cuts. To cut or not to cut? That is the question. After years of coasting along on the back of outrageous fortune, Reserve Bank principling Philip Lowe, as another famous plutocrat once observed, must just be forced tomorrow to take up arms against a sea of economic troubles. Right now, there's an even money bet as to whether the Reserve Bank will shave another 1/4 percentage point off the official cash rate. Ultimately, the debate is not about if, but when. If it doesn't move tomorrow, it most likely will be next month. And there will be at least 2 within the next few months. So he's looking at going down, 0.75? So we're going to hit under 1% interest rates as the cash rate. That's crazy. That's just crazy. That just shows you the economy. I mean, consumer confidence is down. Inflation was 0 the last time we spoke about it. Housing prices are going down in every state. Unemployment is going up. 2 unrelated factors will be weighing on the governor's mind at tomorrow's meeting. One is the upcoming election and the potential political fallout from a rate cut in the final days of the campaign. Well, yeah, that's true. That's true. The other potentially more significant factor is that the US Federal Reserve Chief Jeremy Powell may just have delivered Mr. Lowe some breathing space by thumbing his nose last week at US President Donald Trump's demands to cut American interest rates. The American central bank boss has put our currency under pressure. On Friday, the Aussie battler spent most of the day below 70 cents, a situation that would have delighted the boffins at the Reserve Bank. For their entire focus now will be on undercutting the currency in an effort to boost growth and inflation. Okay? And the best way to do this is through slashing rates. Now, one thing we need to add to this discussion, I don't think the author discusses this, but is the element of sovereign risk. Now, one example is the changes to interest-only lending practices that's come about by the Royal Commission and other intervention, and Labor putting forward they're going to adjust negative gearing for all future people. They'll get to keep their investment properties, all the Labor politicians and everyone else, but no one else going forward will be able to take advantage of the same opportunities that they had. That's really fair, isn't it? But these things are seen as sovereign risk. So for foreigners wanting to invest their money from overseas to take advantage of our low Australian dollar and the interest rates, well, do they risk it? Do they risk it? What if a government change happens? This is why you're seeing the economy always slows down near an election, particularly with these topics. And there's a third debate happening between Bill and ScoMo, so short for Shorten and ScoMo, and I'll probably watch that live or stream a review of it and we'll have a talk about it. I'll be interested to see if they discuss any of these issues with the economy, because I don't know if they actually want to win. So the case for a cut. The long grinding downturn in our housing market finally has begun to bite. Oh, yep. Last week, both the ANZ Banking Group and NAB highlighted a small but significant uptick in the number of homeowners having trouble repaying their mortgages. Yes, we looked at that episode, a couple of days ago. It's happening. According to ANZ's numbers, almost 5% of households now have slipped into what's known as negative equity. That's where that's not exactly right. 5% of mortgage holders have slipped into negative equity, not 5% of households. But I'm just being pedantic here. That's when you owe more on your house than it's worth. And a gentleman left a comment on a previous video I did about this, and it sounds really gut-wrenching. It really does. It's a situation that becomes serious if unemployment rises. Well, it is. Our manufacturing sector in Queensland is going down. You can't just keep employing people in the government sector. It's not going to work. It's just a self-feeding machine of bureaucracy. Not only do defaulting borrowers lose their home, they still end up with debt. And losses start mounting in the banking sector, ultimately putting the economy further under strain. That's also starting to impact spending. On Friday, the Federal Chamber of Automotive Industries reported an 8.1% drop in new car sales in April compared with a year earlier when motorcycle holdings took the stock exchange and motorcycle market told the stock exchange the motorcycle market had shrunk 14.6% in the first 3 months of this year. So, well, we already know the consumer confidence is going down. It's just seeing it here. Add in an inflation rate of 0 in March. Yep. A plunging annual GDP of just 2.3%. And there's some pretty compelling reasons to cut interest rates right now. Well, yes, but I don't know how much effect it's going to have. Is it going to have an effect? Will it encourage more people to invest in property? Or will they wait? Will they wait for prices to drop because there's no confidence? Well, they'll definitely wait until after the election. Waiting for unemployment to deteriorate, as some suggest the RBA should, will be leaving things too late. Well, yes, I agree with that because I don't know if it's going to make much difference what they're proposing to do, but how we measure unemployment, I think it needs to be updated because you've got different technology. You've got a lot of people underemployed. It should be the underemployment rate. Okay, I found it. And this is interesting. The seasonally adjusted unemployment rate has stayed at 8.1%. That's over 1 million people in Australia who have work but who want to work more hours. And that's from March. So that was a month ago. But it's still a lot higher than the unemployment rate, isn't it? The underemployment rate. That's interesting to keep in mind. And we'll see where that's going because they're not making decisions on that. If you're working 1 hour a week or 1 hour a month, if you're part-time or if you've left actually, we'll look at another one. So I found the participation rate that we want to look at. I went to the ABS website and trawled through their stuff. So the participation rate in our economy, and that's the number of people participating in it, is at 65.6, and that hasn't changed in a year. Now, the underemployment is sitting the same in the last 2 months. Unemployment sitting the same in the last 2 months. It's all dropped from March 2018 to now, which is March, which is interesting to watch this participation rate if it will stay the same. I hope it does. But one thing I noticed here is the trend. So our unemployment rate is starting to trend up. It's starting to trend up. So that's something that isn't entirely surprising, but it's something that we need to look at. So monthly hours worked in all jobs increased. Okay. So I'll link to this if you'd like to go through it. It's always fun going through the ABS website and the statistics, but these are the things that we need to be aware of. So the participation rate is one I will keep an eye on. So back to the article. Will a rate cut stop the housing rot? I'm calling it the housing crash. It may slow the decline, but it won't halt it. I'm not surprised. I agree with that. That seems to make a lot of sense. Demand. Wait. There we go. I'll get back. So demand is being crimped by the sudden introduction of responsible lending. Or maybe the banks see what's coming and just don't want to expose themselves to unnecessary risk. Maybe that's just the cynical side of me. On the other side of the equation, supply is about to explode with several 100,000 new apartments about to hit the market. Yes, that is a huge thing that needs to be discussed. We all know the quality of these apartments, don't we? We all know it, but there's so many of them. Here in Brisbane, so many of them are going up. When you're so far along the job, you might as well finish it, sell it, whatever you can. These two factors combined can only mean one thing: further falls in housing prices. So if you're looking at buying an apartment in the next year, wait. Don't buy anything off the plan. don't buy it off the plan. Not a chance. Just wait, guys. Wait. So why bother with a rate cut? Yes, indeed. Why? NAB's interim boss, Phil Cronican, last week forcefully argued there was little to gain from another cut to interest rates. Monetary policy has a lot of potency when it's at high levels. Yes. When they're at low levels, it just doesn't have the same effect. Yeah, he's exactly right. He's right in some respects, so long as you are looking purely at internal dynamics. But his comments largely miss the point. The real objective behind a rate cut is to sink the Australian dollar. Okay, that's not going to help anyone who's exporting. In decades past, well, actually, no, it will help everyone exporting, won't help anyone importing. I remember when the Australian buck was nearly at $1 US, and we bought a kind of like a Kickstarter for a laser cutter, and they took so long to do it that they eventually allowed everyone to pull their money out because they completely missed their deadlines as a crowdfunding thing. And in that time period, the Aussie dollar had dropped by about like 20%, so I made a profit. So yeah, that's not the way I'd suggest doing currency trading, but laser cutters. In decades past, before deregulation, a weak currency was considered political suicide. Opponents would seize upon a devaluation as a sign of economic mismanagement, not any longer. Governments and central banks for decades have been engaging in a race to the bottom when it comes to currency. A weak currency boosts an economy by making exports cheaper and therefore more competitive, and imports more expensive, which puts domestic industry on a stronger footing. Okay, that sounds great, but remember, we have a very simple economy. It's not as complex as some of the others, and I will bring this up. So this is an overview of our economy. We're 59th out of 126 in the world in regards to the complexity of our economy, and that means just the complexity of what we're manufacturing. Our exports are 20th out of 220 in the world, so we're $243 billion. So they're going to be more valuable. They'll be more attractive to people. Our imports, so we import $199 billion worth of things, and we're 22nd out of 221 in the world. Okay, so those are going to get more expensive for everyone importing things. Now let's have a look at what we're exporting here, and I'll make sure you can see most of that. Iron ore, we're exporting 20% of our export. Coal, gas, gold. So you can see here what we're exporting here. Wine, and a lot of simple goods. What are we importing? What's going to get more expensive? Broadcasting equipment, cars, even though they're going down. Refined oil, your petrol is going to get more expensive. I keep seeing Palmer United's party, the Australian party, whatever he's called it, warning about how little refined petroleum is in Australia. We've only got 17 days that we don't refine any oil in Australia. So there you go. I mean, everything here is going to get more expensive. Computers, delivery trucks, special purpose ships, vehicle parts. What else? Valves. Valves will get more expensive when you want your valves, guys. So just keep that in mind. All of these natural resources that we make that make up the biggest part of our exports are going to be, more affordable for foreign countries. But all of those things we produce, it's not like we're exporting cars or we're exporting computers, guys. We're exporting coal and stuff from the farms. So a lot of people's day-to-day, your iPhone is going to get more expensive. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? In some ways it's good because it'll help those parts of the economy. The export parts of the economy will hopefully flow through and have a benefit for everyone else. But you also got to remember there's this side of it too. So just buy your car now. Why it will work this time. Australian competitiveness was belted out of the park by the mining boom. When our currency soared to almost $1.10, a large swathe of our industry, particularly manufacturing, was hollowed out. It was the final nail in the car industry's coffin. The Great Recession made things even worse. The developed world, led by the US, fought a currency war that took no prisoners. We were among the casualties. Between them, the US, Japan, and Europe printed vast sums of cash, the idea being that increasing the amount of cash lowered the currency's value. the US alone pumped an extra 3.5 trillion into the economy. And remember, that lowers the value of every dollar you have in the bank, guys. That's just put it all in Bitcoin, everyone. Forget this fiat con. I need to do a preppers video. I'll do that. So Australia was too small to take part in the war. Honestly, I think a lot of people put their money in Australia to protect it, to keep its value, and that's why it went up so much. But we can now, not through printing money, but simply by cutting rates. For most of our history, Australian interest rates have been higher than the United States and other developing nations because we needed import cash to fund our development. But that's all changed, as the graph above shows. Last year, US official rates climbed well above ours, and it looks as though this will be no fleeting phenomenon. America's economy is rebounding, and we're slowing. Yes, we're definitely slowing. On Friday night, the US jobs numbers were way better than expected. Oh, look at that. I wonder who's the leader of the United States? You know, crazy kind of property developer who loves Mexican food and hires women, but apparently is racist and sexist for some reason. Yeah. Make America great again. Where's ours? Where's Australia's Make Australia great again? It's not so much the level of our rates that matter. On that point, Mr. Chronican is correct. But the gap between our interest rates and America's will have a big impact on the currency. It's what's known as the spread. The wider it gets in America's favor, the weaker our dollar will become. That's because investment funds looking for a decent return will scraper offshore in search of higher yields, scarper. As our dollar sinks, inflation, in theory at least, should escalate, and wages should follow, helping Australian households overcome the mountain of mortgage debt now weighing them down. A weaker dollar will deliver bigger returns for our mineral and agricultural exports. Plus, it will ramp up our services industry, education and tourism among them. Yes, no, he's got a point there. The US Central Bank had planned to continue boosting interest rates through 29, but last year's stock market plunge in the lead up to Christmas, which sent Mr. Trump apoplectic, kiboshed the idea. Apoplectic, kiboshed the idea. Why would you use those terms? I guess he doesn't. He's not a fan of Trump. If the US had continued hiking rates, we may have been able to merely sit on our hands for a few more years as America widened interest rate gaps for us. That's no longer an option. The US is now likely to sit still. The onus is on Philip Lowe to don the armor. I wonder if it will make a difference. I really do. I guess from a global perspective, it might. But will that be offset with the sovereign risk that's been presented by our own government? Everyone, let me know what you think. Please like, share, and subscribe. Ding the bell to see my daily updates. I'll see you all again tomorrow. Bye for now.